Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. Look what we're covering today. NECA Ben Cooper, here we go. That is a NECA Ben Cooper action figure. La, da, 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 da. This is a series of child action figures. They're designed to look like little kids, and they are wearing reproductions of 60s, 70s, and 80s Ben Cooper and Collegeville Halloween costumes. So these, at least so far, in the first two sets of these, the first two waves, these are not made-up costumes. These are little miniature replicas of costumes that were actually available back in the day. And even though the line is called the Ben Cooper line, they're mixing up Ben Cooper and Collegeville costumes under the Ben Cooper banner. So they all say, at least so far, they all say Ben Cooper on them. But in fact, the line includes Ben Cooper and Collegeville. Now this first wave, I'm not sure if any of those are Collegeville. Those might all be Ben Cooper. But as the series continues, you'll see that they start including Collegeville characters. And all of the first two waves come in a box like this. This is an original 1970s Ben Cooper monster box with a Creature from the Black Lagoon costume. And all of the NECA Ben Cooper Wave 1, Wave 2 figures come in a box, as you just saw, designed to look like these. But in fact, none actually came in a box like this except the Creature. The Creature is the only one that was actually sold in a box that looks like this. We're going to take a look at some actual vintage Ben Cooper Halloween costume boxes, and we're going to compare the vintage masks and boxes to the NECA versions. I just thought that would be a fun way to mix it up a little bit instead of just saying here's the NECA figure like 1,000 other YouTube channels have already done. Now I will address the controversy surrounding these figures, and yes, there is controversy. Really, I think the controversy about how NECA has distributed these figures has eclipsed the toys themselves. I think the headline is really the way NECA has upset many, many collectors by this very bizarre way that they've distributed these lines. The headline is the controversy, not the toys themselves. I think we've reached a point now where the bigger, more interesting topic is how NECA is selling these things. But I will wait until the end to get into that. This isn't a definitive history of these toys, or certainly isn't a definitive history of NECA. Certainly, though, I think if you were going to tell the story of these toys, you must tell the story of the controversy or go home. You are not being credible if you talk about these toys and don't cover the controversy. The two are now intertwined. But let's first talk about the toys. So here is, take a drink every time I say, so here is. I say that too much. I'll try not to say it. This is the Creature. We just saw that. This is NECA's Creature from the Black Lagoon. And it is a little girl wearing that Creature costume. And since I have a very typical male mind of my generation, when I saw that it was a girl, I said, oh, come on. No girl ever wore the Creature from the Black Lagoon in the 70s. Humph. And no sooner did I think that than a Gen X woman posted a picture of herself from the 70s wearing Creature from the Black Lagoon costume online. Not in response to anybody, just showing her enthusiasm for these toys. So that proved me wrong pretty quickly. And it is, I mean, you would think sort of stereotypical conventional wisdom would be that NECA would make all these little monster trick-or-treaters boys, just because, again, the stereotypical thinking is that little boys wore monster costumes. And it is interesting that NECA chose not to do that. NECA mixed it up with girls and boys. And even in some of their promotional copy, NECA notes that these costumes are worn by a diverse group of children. So that's not haphazard. They made a conscious decision to do it that way. So it's a good thing that I was proven wrong. I mean, that was a very stereotypical way of thinking, very narrow based on just my personal experience growing up in my little block, in my little school, in my little neighborhood. And there was a much bigger world that I didn't see, and these toys reflect that. We're not going to be taking these out of the box. This is a mint and box channel, so don't expect me to be opening these up. It's going to stay in the box. I think you can see that pretty well. You can get a pretty good picture of that costume in there. And each of these figures has a little bag or a candy bucket or something to carry the candy in. And they have a little scene back there. Now, I don't think you can see that very well. They have different inserts. I thought they all had the same, but no, they've got different ones. Oh, wow, a little Frankie back there. The whole package is nice. The box, the insert, everything. I mean, they just did a good job. And I think the presentation is really half the appeal. If these came in, let's say, just a bubble card with some minimal artwork, I don't think they'd be half as desirable. Now, let's look at the actual creature costume. No, we won't be. I'm already taking way too long with this first one. I need to power through these because we've got a lot to look at. So we won't be taking things out of the box for the most part. I mean, these costumes, they're not coming out of the box. The thing about this creature costume, whereas the figure's costume, like the chest illustration, does look pretty close to the actual one, the mask is different. There were a couple different versions sold in a box as far as like the artwork on the mask is concerned, but none of them looked exactly like this. None were as colorful as that. There was a rack version of the mask, in other words, one that was sold by itself, no costume, no box, just hanging on a peg hook. There was a rack version that was much more colorful, had different colors like those yellow gills, and was more similar to what you see here. But even that wasn't exactly the same. And it's interesting that they have the Wolfman on this box, but they didn't put out the Wolfman. He's not in wave 1, he's not in wave 2, he's not in wave 3, he's not in wave 4. They're talking about making one, but why is he not already in the set? We'll come back to him. So there is Creature, the original 70s costume in the box, and the NECA version. And this is the only one, the only NECA figure that, from the first 2 waves, that comes in a box that actually resembles the box the real costume was sold in. That's why we started with Creature. And Creature can just kind of loom in the background there. Now let's go to Frankie again. We did a whole episode on Ben Cooper Frankensteins, and we looked at this checker shirt version in that episode. And we saw various masks that were similar to this one. I don't know if any of them were exactly the same. Now, NECA, they're not nailing the likeness on all of these. Some are more authentic than others. In some cases, they're getting close enough. In other cases, they're right on target. Let's see a Frankenstein that resembles this figure. I think the closest one is this. This is a Spooktown Frankenstein. And as I said in the previous episode, this is modeled off of Glenn Strange's interpretation of the Frankenstein monster. That is a classic, iconic Ben Cooper costume. And since this box is a little bit trashed, let's open it and see what's inside here. There's the mask by itself. This is the costume. Frankie's got fangs. I don't know if this Frankenstein has a checkered shirt, does he? I don't think he does. Yeah, he doesn't. So the costume in that box is not exactly like that. And we're going to see this on several of these. The mask and the costume don't necessarily go together. Now, I'm not saying there never was a Ben Cooper Frankenstein that had that mask and that costume combination. In fact, I'm pretty sure that there was. But that doesn't mean that just any box Ben Cooper Frankenstein that has that mask peeking out the window is going to have that costume inside. We did see that costume in the Frankenstein episode. And I think the mask, well, I don't know. I don't remember if the mask was exactly like that. We had one that had a bolt in the middle of the forehead. He was really interesting. I think he was my favorite one. We had some that were more movie style with a darker green face and black jacket design. Looked almost had like an Azrael Hamway look to it. There are many different Frankensteins that Ben Cooper made. And with a lot of these, as I went through the costumes in my collection, as I went online looking at different costumes, as I went on eBay, I discovered that there are many examples where maybe the mask matches the NECA figure, but the costume is different, or the costume matches the NECA figure, but the mask is different. It's not, it's not always an exact match. All I know is, in researching this, it's quite obvious that these masks and these costumes did not always appear in the same combination represented by the NECA figures. This is a mummy, and I would call this a 60s style mummy, because even though it was available in the early 70s, but I think this was introduced in the 60s, this style. And it is, it was licensed by Universal, but the design is not at all a movie style design. The mummy from the 70s is definitely Karis, and it looks like the movie version of Karis. It looks like the Aurora model. Now that artwork looks like Karis on the chest, but that doesn't. That looks like a, like a hospitalized patient. Someone was in a car crash. So this is the earlier mummy costume that they chose to go with. I don't know why. Interestingly, NECA said that this first wave, and I think the second wave too, they were not licensed. There's no universal license on these. So how in the world did they make a creature without getting a universal license? I don't know. But there was an interview where a NECA representative said that they did not license these first two waves. These characters are not licensed. So I don't know how they're skating around that, but that might have been why they went with this earlier Mummy instead of the more film-oriented 70s version. Let's look at the costume. That is an early version of this boxed mummy. And it's got that green highlights, just like the mask on the NECA figure. And I have another version in, even though I love the black cats, I think the pumpkin box is my preferred box. It's just more Halloween-y. Same mask. You can get a better view of that side of the face. And there is a costume in there, even though you can't see it. It's behind the mask. Two box designs for the same mask and costume. Let's see if there's any difference in this mask, because on the little monitor there it looks kind of different, but it's not. It's the same mask, exact same mask. And let's see if there's any difference in the licensing. Nope. Ah. Okay. That's interesting. This version, which I think is the earlier one, is licensed by Universal Pictures, which is what they were called at the time, Universal Pictures. That is licensed. Doesn't look like Karis or Imhotep, but it's licensed. This one does not have a license, at least not on the box. It doesn't have any licensing, like, you know, universal copyright information on the box. The costume might have it on there, but the box doesn't. Once again, here is the NECA costume. Well, NECA figure, I should say. And here is the Ben Cooper costume. I like that little mummy. I don't remember this costume as a child. I grew up with the Karis version. This was a little bit before my time. That's why I think that one is earlier. I remember the blue box mummy that looked like Karis. So, I mean, the Karis that came in these blue boxes like this, and I do have that. We'll see it on our show someday. It looked more like that. It's not yellow. It doesn't have that glow-in-the-dark aesthetic. It's gray, but it does look more or less like that, which is obviously all of this artwork is based on the Aurora Glow Kit box art, which was appropriated by Ezra Kenway International for their Super Monsters, and Ben Cooper also appropriated it. That's an angry little skeleton. Isn't he cute? I say he because I think the creature is the only girl in this set, in this first set. it's interesting that they chose to go with a skeleton in this first wave. They got Frankenstein, creature, mummy. You'd think there'd be, oh, I don't know, a wolf man maybe? But instead they rounded it out with a skeleton and a devil. Here's the skeleton. I don't have a skeleton that exactly matches that one. Here's the mask. Okay, that is a match. This is the mask that this kid is wearing. You can see he's got the lightning bolt scar, or electricity, or whatever that is, on his forehead. So that's the right mask. But I don't have a full costume that matches. Got the mask. I have a skeleton costume. I have a few actually, and I checked all of my box skeletons, and none of them have this mask. I think I did have one that had the chest design, but the mask was completely different. Out of all of them, this is the one that kind of sort of, you know, it's in the ballpark, but obviously it's not the right mask. And I don't think it's got that same chest design. Most of the skeletons have a skeleton design. They don't have a picture of a skeleton. They have a rib cage. There was one on eBay that was in a box. It had exactly the right mask, exactly the right chest design to match the NECA figure, and it was being sold along with the NECA figure. And the seller wanted a steep price. I think he wanted $300 or $350 or whatever. And I've noticed since these toys came out, since these figures came out, the corresponding Ben Cooper costumes have gone way up in price. People are seeking out the costumes, the original costumes that match the figures. And I think they're finding, like I did, that sometimes there isn't one, that you have to get two, one that matches the mask and one that matches the costume. But in this case, with the skeleton on eBay, the mask and the costume matched. I don't know how long the Ben Cooper costumes are going to have a bump from these figures, but I think Ben Cooper in general is getting a bump. It's not just from these figures. I think it's entering the popular culture in a broader way. This is a devil. Interesting, again, interesting that they would choose to go with a devil in that first wave instead of a wolf man or a Dracula or something that would round out the name brand monsters. But then, you know, then they would end up with a next wave that would have just generic characters, and there wouldn't be a Frankenstein or a Dracula or whatever. So I can understand they didn't want to use up all the name brand characters in one wave. Okay, that makes sense. I have, just like with skeletons, I have several boxed devil costumes, but none that exactly match that devil. And this certainly doesn't match that devil. But let's just look at him anyway. Here's an example of a devil. Here's a Ben Cooper devil. And I have a few of these, and some of them, the mustaches are going straight out, more like the NECA one. Some of them are pointed up like this. Some of them have colors on the horns, some don't. But none of the devils I have exactly match the NECA one. And this obviously does not match it. But at least I've got a devil to show you. And looking again on eBay, I couldn't find, there's two devils in this series so far. I couldn't find a devil that had the exact match of the mask and the costume. And none of my devils have exactly these chest designs. I have one that has a similar chest design with a devil face, I've got another one that's got like more flames and a doubling the flames. But I couldn't find one in my collection or on eBay. I couldn't find one that was exactly right with the right face and the right design on the chest. But that's wave 1. Now let's look at wave 2. Well, while we're on the subject of devils, let's just go to another devil. I might have had that chest design on one of my devils. This is from wave 2. Another devil, and not remarkably different. I mean, obviously it is a different design. Yes, it's a different mask, different costume. But why add another devil in the second wave when you've already got one? I thought that was a strange choice. It just seems odd to give us 2 devils in the first 2 waves. And one isn't remarkably different than the other. I don't have a preference for which devil I prefer. I mean, they're both cute. Let's see what else I have here. Oh, okay. This is Vampire Girl. Anyone who knows their costumes knows that is not a Ben Cooper costume. That is a classic Collegeville costume. One of the iconic Collegeville costumes with this Vampira style Vampire Girl on the chest. And look at the little dots on her face. Take note of those. Very interesting that they included those. This costume was never sold in a box like this, and it was never sold in a Ben Cooper box as far as I know. It was a Collegeville costume. One of their staples that they continued to sell for years and years and years. Many different box designs, but none like this. Let's look at a couple of Collegeville Vampire Girls. Here's one. You see it's Collegeville. One of the all-time classic staples of the Collegeville Halloween lineup. And here's another one in a later box. And on this one you can see those little dots. See that? See the dots on her face? Those silver dots. See those? Those are reflective. This was made during a time when they were very concerned about safety. Halloween was coming under fire, and the Halloween companies wanted to stress safety in their Halloween products, not just costumes, anything. Safety was a big concern, so they wanted to show parents right there on the face that this was reflective. It was safe. Let me see if it says anything about that. It just calls it a vampire, not a vampire girl. Ah, reflect a life mask. Reflect a light mask. There we go. It advertises it right there. Reflect a light mask. And since this one is, this box is falling apart, let's look at this one. This version does not have the reflect-a-light dots. Some people think this was inspired by the Topstone female vampire. I don't know if it was or not. I think they were both inspired by the Vampira Morticia archetype that was popular in the 50s and 60s. If you've watched before, you know I don't like to take these things out of the... I don't like to unfold these things because they'll crack. Take my word for it. The design that's on the NECA costume is on this costume. They captured the design correctly on the NECA figure. if you've seen my other costume videos, you know that I've had bad experiences trying to unfold these costumes. First of all, they never get back in the box the same way. Second of all, they crack. You know, they split, they crack. Just the act of unfolding it and folding it back will split them. Let's use this as a comparison because this has the dots. So this costume very specifically is the one that the NECA one is replicating, because this has the reflect the light dots just like the face on this one. I thought that was interesting. I don't know if that was deliberate or if NECA just happened to have one of these masks as a reference. I don't know if they know that this costume was made with and without those dots. But I thought that was, this is actually one of the more faithful reproductions. I was impressed, particularly because of those dots. And the whole suit and everything just looks right. And you can see she's got a little jack-o'-lantern candy pail. I wish you could see that better in the box. This Dracula is actually based on the Monster Squad Dracula. The mask is the Monster Squad Dracula mask. That costume is a Ben Cooper Dracula costume illustration, but it didn't come with that mask. And I don't have a mask or a costume that exactly matches either of those. I do not have the Monster Squad Dracula at all. And I have a couple of Dracula, you know, Ben Cooper Draculas, but they don't match that costume, that illustration. And the faces don't come anywhere close to that. There was an old Dracula costume, a 60s one. There were a couple of them. And they look so different, there's no point even showing them to you. They're completely different than this. There's no comparison. So there is no vintage costume that correlates exactly with this NECA Dracula, because they have the Monster Squad mask and then a Ben Cooper Dracula costume. And in my collection, I don't even have a Dracula mask. That's a good match for that. This is a witch. I have a mask that matches that mask, but I don't have a costume. Looking on eBay, I found a couple of costumes that had the right mask, but not this costume. And I saw a couple of costumes that had this illustration on the chest, but did not have that mask. So I couldn't find one on eBay that was exactly right. And in my own collection, I have an adult costume that has a face very much like that, but it has real hair attached and it does not have the hat on top. But it seems like it's the same Collegeville witch character. And yes, this is a Collegeville costume. Ben Cooper never made a witch like that. That is a Collegeville witch design. That's Collegeville's standard witch that they made for years in different style boxes. And they made very similar masks. Like as I just said, I have an adult one that's very similar to that, but it's not exactly the same. Some of these witches have kind of like a little, you know, like a half cape, a little smock. And some of the Collegeville costumes, they do have a design like that, but they don't necessarily come with that mask. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying Collegeville never paired that mask with that costume. But you will find several examples, if you search over time, of this mask with different costumes, or this costume with different masks. Let's look at the mask that I have. It's not in very good shape, unfortunately. It's a little beat up, or a lot beat up. That's the mask. So that mask more or less matches the NECA figure. That's a money shot, isn't it? That looks like the thumbnail right there. I should just make that the thumbnail. And you can see, I mean, this is the correct mask, but unfortunately I don't have a costume that matches that. And there was a really nice boxed version of this on eBay. Again, it went for an unusually high amount of money compared to what it would normally go for. Also, you know, it's Halloween season, so that's part of it too. But I think the NECA figures have really bumped the prices on some of these costumes in general, but particularly the ones that match the figures. So there was a boxed mask like this, but the costume was not this costume. It had a half cape and did not have that same chest illustration. But it had this mask, and it was in really nice shape. I kind of wish I'd bought it, but I think if I wait, I think some of the hype will die down, and I would be able to get it a little more cheaply in years to come. And it's not an emergency. I mean, it's, you know, it's a witch. Oh, there's Billy. Will he come up here? Hi, Billy. Well, Billy's right there, but I guess he's not coming up. Billy, why don't you come up and say hi anymore? Come on up. Nope, he's lying down. Okay, here's the Phantom. This is easily one of my favorites. I really was surprised that they made this one. The Phantom of the Opera. Ben Cooper made this costume in the late 60s, early 70s. It was never in a blue box, as far as I know. I don't know how far back this costume goes. In the early 60s, Ben Cooper made a shock monster style mask that they paired with a Phantom costume, and they called that the Phantom of the Opera. And Halco made a James Cagney style Phantom of the Opera. This is a Universal Studios Phantom of the Opera that Ben Cooper produced. And I don't know, did it come with that costume? Well, let's take a look at the actual costume. Here it is. This is the same. This is the costume that figure is based on. So this is the Ben Cooper. Whoop. There we go. The Phantom of the Opera. I really like this costume. This is a classic Ben Cooper costume. This is, yeah, one of the ones you definitely want to get if you're into collecting Ben Cooper Halloween costumes. You definitely want this one. I think even as a kid, I would have wanted to wear this. I like the Phantom of the Opera even as a child. I'd never seen the movie, not as a little kid, but I'd certainly seen all the imagery of Lon Chaney and James Cagney from Man of a Thousand Faces. And of course I had the Aurora model kit. So I knew very well who the Phantom was, and I really liked the design of that character and the idea of that character. So I would have really liked this costume as a kid. And I think NECA nailed it as far as the design of that mask is concerned. I think they did a great job. This is my favorite of the line so far. I'm not going to open this Phantom, but is it possible for me to see whether he's wearing that costume? No, it's not enough of it showing. I know there is. I know that is an accurate Phantom, Ben Cooper Phantom costume. I just don't know if this one's wearing it. Yeah, this thing's sealed up for all time. Well, I think that's the costume he's wearing in there. If not, then the Shock Monster one probably is. I know that the Shock Monster version does have a knife stabbed into him like that. That's why I'm wondering if they've taken the earlier costume and paired it with the later mask. I don't know. Not very informative, I'm sorry. Now, is that all of them? I showed you the Dracula, I showed you the Phantom, I showed you the Witch, I showed you the Vampire Girl, and the other devil. So I guess that's all that wave. Okay, now I don't have wave 3 that has the Alien, Gizmo, Stripe, and the animated Beetlejuice. I had that wave on order. I pre-ordered it, but I don't have it. Other people have it, and some of those figures have turned up in Target stores. I haven't found any. In fact, just before I shot this a few hours ago, I made one last trip to a Target store just to see if maybe I'd get lucky and they'd have a few so I could show them to you here. No such luck. And I'm sure just as soon as this episode uploads, I'll get a box with that wave in it. Too late. I'm not doing a follow-up later. That's another reason why I delayed this episode. I was hoping that third wave would arrive at my doorstep and I could show them to you. But here are pictures of the wave. These are all licensed characters, and this was the first time NECA in this Ben Cooper series delved into licensed characters. Even though they had the creature from the Black Lagoon and a Universal style Phantom and other characters, officially none of those wave 1 and 2 characters were licensed. This is the first time that officially NECA presents licensed characters in this Ben Cooper action figure series. And though I don't have the Alien to show you, I do have the costume. So I don't have the action figure to show you. It's on its way, but I don't have the action figure in hand. I do have the costume. So just imagine, sound like John Lennon, just imagine that the Alien figure, the NECA figure, is sitting here. Look, it's so much bigger in real life than you imagine. Look at that. It's amazing. So just imagine it's there. It's not really there, but imagine. Okay, now here is the actual costume. That is the Ben Cooper Alien costume from 1979. And NECA did a great job of replicating the style of the box, which they did not do with the first 2 waves. In this third wave, they're trying to put each costume, each child wearing the costume, in a box that looks like the box that costume was historically sold in. Beautiful, beautiful costume. I remember this when I was a kid. I don't think I had this. I could be wrong. I know I never went trick-or-treating in it. I think I might have had a rack version of this mask that I just kind of played with. That could be. I kind of remember that, but I mean, I certainly saw these things in stores for sure. I was very aware of this costume as a child. And I had my Kenner Alien action figure, so I was very much an Alien kid. And I think I did have, I don't know if I had the whole shebang, I might have, but I think I did at least have the mask. Because I remember playing Alien wearing this mask, so I'm sure I had the mask. And obviously this is, you know, licensed 20th Century Fox. And the NECA figure that I don't have, but based on the photos I've seen, the NECA figure is a wonderful recreation of this. The mask, the costume, the box, the whole thing. They just nailed it. Could be my second favorite of the line. What an unusual choice to do the alien. And at first I was not too happy about going into the more modern era characters and the licensed characters. I really wanted them to stick with the old-fashioned Frankenstein, Dracula, witches, devils, skeletons. But that alien kind of sold me. I said, well, I'm getting another box here. I said, well, if they're all as good as that one, okay. I don't have Gizmo, but I do have Stripe. So again, imagine that I've got the Stripe figure here. Oh, it's gone. This is the actual, real, vintage Ben Cooper Stripe from Gremlins. Does he gotta hold him like this? There he is, there's Stripe. Now, the Gremlins costumes and the Beetlejuice, those are getting a little bit later historically, because so far, everything we've seen, all these other ones have been 60s or 70s costumes. Now we're getting into the 80s. And NECA copied the rainbow style of this box. And from the photos I've seen, the mask and the costumes the little kid figures are wearing are perfect. They did a great job. And I think that putting them in individualized boxes that are correct to the costume historically was the right move. I'd like to see them do that from now on, instead of going back to the blue monster box for future waves. I'd like to see each figure come in a box that is specific to that costume and historically accurate. There is good old Stripe. Gremlin Stripe. The Beetlejuice costume is based on the animated series. And when that first was announced, when the Beetlejuice costume was first announced, a lot of people, including me, thought it was a make-believe costume, because I didn't know they made a Beetlejuice costume. And another collector found the vintage one online and proved that indeed there was such a costume. And then some other people posted some pictures of themselves as children wearing that costume. So I think the Gen X audience that was really into the earlier costumes that Ben Cooper was presenting, we were all a little too old by the time that Beetlejuice rolled around to remember it. I know that was after my time. I was not trick-or-treating by the time the Beetlejuice costume showed up. Trick-or-treating was a thing of the past. I think I was in college when that costume was in stores. So I did not remember that. I do remember the Gremlins. Even though I was no longer trick-or-treating, I still had just barely enough of a grasp on childhood, and I had a younger brother who was really into Gremlins. So that's why I was aware of that. That concludes the look at the costumes at the figures they've actually released so far. They announced pre-orders on a fourth wave, and I think this might be the Jump the Shark wave. This fourth wave is comprised of fantasy costumes, and some of them look nice. Like, I like the Krampus. I'll probably break down and buy that whole line. I really don't want the Thanksgiving. Out of the four of them, that's the one that's, for me, the odd man out. It's too modern. I mean, that's a recent film. I think that was last year, right? But the other three, okay, they're kind of iconic in their own way. And the Krampus looks really cool with the open mouth, and I like that movie. But a lot of people were dismayed to find NECA delving into fantasy characters. Why? There's so many real costumes that they can draw upon. Why go into costumes that never existed? Then so what is that, fourth wave? The fifth wave is going to be DC superheroes. Now, I like that. Even though I'm a monster collector, I will probably get those just in context with the rest of this series. Those look really cool. They kind of remind me of like 70s Mego superheroes, and they get the look right. They look like those 70s costumes, and the boxes look right. So I like what I'm seeing with that DC superhero line. And then the next wave is a reissue of the first wave in glow-in-the-dark. So a glow-in-the-dark reissue of this wave. And NECA has already hinted at some other characters that they might make in the future, including a Wolfman. I don't know why the Wolfman wasn't included in the first two waves. Why did we get two Devils and no Wolfman? I don't understand that. I'm wondering if there could have been a problem with the upcoming Universal Wolfman remake. Since NECA has licensing through Universal, I bet they're making toys based on that movie. Maybe there's some kind of agreement where they can't make other kinds of Wolfman figures for a period of time because of the movie, this new movie coming out. Maybe they have to make that Wolfman. I'm just speculating because it seems bizarre that they didn't include the Wolfman when they made Frankenstein and Dracula and Mummy and Creature, and the Wolfman's right there on the box, so why not make the Wolfman? But apparently they are going to make him eventually. Sometime in the next year, we'll see a Wolfman. Now let's talk about how these toys are being distributed. And I didn't plan this out. I don't know what I'm going to say. But I think we need to talk about this. When NECA announced that first wave, it was only available through their website. And they showed the figures. They didn't have any boxes to show. So you can see how big a part of the appeal of these toys the box art is. That's really part of the toy. They didn't have anything like that to show originally. When these figures were available for pre-order, they just had pictures of the figures. And initially they had some language that made it seem like they came in one box. I was imagining that these all were going to come in one box. They had some confusing language originally. It was expensive. It was $100 for the set. I didn't want to pay that much money, and I was on the fence about it. So I did not order those right away. And by the time they showed pictures of the boxes, that first wave was already sold out. When I saw the boxes, I said, okay, that seals the deal. Now I'm interested. Now I like the presentation of the figure in the box. And then when people started to receive them in hand, when I saw the inserts, some of these have really beautiful looking fall scenes in the background. They have different artwork on the inserts. I said, okay, that's it. The insert with the outer box, with that figure and their little candy pails and bags, the whole package, the whole deal. Okay, now I'm interested. But by then, the availability was over with. It was long gone. A lot of people were upset that they couldn't get their hands on these. And for a few months, there was sort of a catch me if you can. Now you see it, now you don't. Kind of a peekaboo game that NECA was playing with the availability of these figures. They would pop up on the site and then they'd disappear, and their online retailers would make emergency announcements. You have to order them right now. They're available right now, and an hour later they were gone. It was very strange. No big retail chain carried them accept FYE. I don't have any FYE stores in my area, but that was the only retail chain that ever received shipments of these. I'm sure there were some like mom and pop type comic book shops that got some, but the only big chain that got any was FYE. So the only way to buy them was NECA, their official website, or a couple of online retailers. I bought them from Amok Time Toys. And there were a few other online retailers that had them available, but you had to just check constantly to see when they were available. They were always sold out, and then maybe they pop up, surprise, almost like a flash sale, and in 30 minutes or an hour later they were gone. Then the same thing happened with Wave 2. At least now everyone knew what they were getting because we'd seen the boxes, we knew what they looked like. So you knew if you wanted them, jump in there and buy them. And the same kind of thing happened. It was very difficult to order them. They sold out, then they pop up again for available, and they sell out again. At least with Wave 2, there were some stores that did sell them, like Target had them. Not tons of them, but you could find them at Target. And I already said that the Walmart had 2 exclusives. And it was a real pain trying to go on the Walmart website and figure out if there were any available at a store near you. There never were any available at any store near me, according to the website. It almost became like a community-wide effort among collectors to try to help each other get these figures. It was very stressful. It was very difficult to obtain these figures. You really had to, NECA made you work for them. And the same pattern is happening now with Wave 3 and 4, where not as much, but you have to be on the ball to get these things. You can't casually buy them when you're ready to buy them. They're not available at a store near you. Even your online retailers are probably sold out. You really have to be aware of when they come up for pre-order and jump on them. And if you're not in a position to do that, tough. They end up on eBay immediately selling for $100 each or $300 each or some crazy price. That's died down a little bit, but for a while people were getting $1,000 for this Wave 1. It's died down now. NECA is reissuing Wave 1, but as glow-in-the-dark. So that's good. So now people who want Wave 1 can get it, but people who already paid for Wave 1 won't feel cheated because this re-release is different. It's glow-in-the-dark. And you can choose whether you want to buy glow-in-the-dark. If you've already got the standard ones, do you want to buy glow-in-the-dark or not? I'm not. Like their Universal Studios monsters, I don't buy the black and white and the color. I just buy the color ones. I only buy the black and white, like a couple of special characters if I want the black and white one, okay. But for the most part, I just buy the color ones. That's how I manage, to keep things under control. So I'm not going to buy all the glow-in-the-dark ones. There was a convention exclusive skeleton that was glow-in-the-dark, and I did buy that. But I had to buy it secondhand at a premium price. I couldn't get it, even though it was on the website. It was just this little window. There was like a 3-day window, or I guess it was like 10 a.m. It was available Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for an hour or something. But I have to work. I have a day job. I'm not in a position to sit there at a computer at 10 a.m. to pounce on this when it comes up for sale. I have a job to do. And I think a lot of people are in that boat. And I don't know if I'm expressing fully the frustration that people have experienced trying to obtain these figures. If it's not one thing, it's another. Just every week, it seems like there's another obstacle to get these. And someone on the Basement of Horror Facebook group said just a couple days ago, I'm going to respect NECA's desire for me to not own these toys. Something like that. I'm going to respect NECA's wishes that I not own these toys and not try to collect them. And I thought that hit a chord with me, that it seems like NECA doesn't want you to own these toys. They're not making them available. I remember a long time ago, gosh, I think it was in the summer when I did a live stream. I think back then I said something like, NECA, please allow me to buy your toys. This was when I was trying to get the first wave. I want to buy your toys. Will you let me buy them? I'm a customer. I got cash money. Allow me to buy them. I mean, what do I have to do? I have to pass a test? How do I measure up to be allowed to buy your toys? And a lot of people who are even more reserved about these kinds of things are starting to make comments, much like I did. This has just gotten ridiculous. Just make the toys available. What is this? Just put them on the website for sale. Tell us what's going on. A big part of this is communication. And I'm seeing this not just with NECA, but with a lot of other companies. Super 7 comes to mind. They don't tell you anything, so you can't plan. If something's limited, they don't tell you it's limited. They don't say this is a limited edition of 500 pieces or 5,000 pieces. They don't say this will be available for 10 days. This is the window, and we'll take orders during that time. They don't tell you what's going on. So you think something's limited, you buy it right away, and then it's still available a year later. Or you think something's going to be just generally available on an ongoing basis, and then a few days later it's sold out and you don't have a chance to get it anymore because they don't tell you what's going on. They don't tell you when something's about to sell out. Like in the physical media world, if there's a limited Blu-ray, let's say they're making 5,000, an edition of 5,000 of a special edition Blu-ray, you could go on the website and you can say there's 2,000 left, there's 3,000 left, there's less than 1,000 left. You can see what's going on and you can plan accordingly. The toy companies don't do that, and it leaves people frustrated. And I feel like this is deliberate, like they don't want you to know what's going on. They want to create hysteria. They want to create, in a sense, excitement or buzz around their toys by making people frustrated and angry, so they go online and they talk about it. Collectors, not only do they have fear of missing out, but they have this feeling of victory, that they are among the lucky few who did not miss out, that they are victorious. They've got the thing everybody else wants. I think that creates an unhealthy atmosphere where you have a bunch of frustrated collectors who are now competing with each other. It's almost like hunting for Pokemon. It should be fun. I think there's a fun way to do this, but that's not what we've got. This isn't fun. It's fear of missing out, and it's the opposite emotion. This feeling of having what everyone else doesn't have, which, okay, that's competition, but do we need to turn just buying new toys into some kind of competition? That's crazy. Just make the toys. Just put the toys on the store shelf or put them on the website. Just make the toys available. There are online retailers who are complaining that their customers don't have their pre-ordered toys because NECA hasn't shipped them to these retailers, so they can't fill those orders, and yet those toys are showing up at Target. What's going on? Some people have them in hand. Some people are posting online, look, I've got it. And then some retailers, there's no sign of their orders so that they can fill their customers' orders. So that's frustrating. And I keep coming back to what that member of my Facebook group said. A lot of people are saying that they've had it. They're just not going to collect these things. It's too frustrating. It's gotten ridiculous. It's just turned into this big game. I'm going to respect NECA's wishes that I not own these toys. That touched a chord with me when I read that. I feel like NECA and other toy companies, they want hysteria. They want collectors to not know what's going on, to be confused, to be put off balance so that they can't make decisions. They don't have any information on which to base decisions. And they start to feel desperate and frustrated. And that feeds a hysteria, which makes these things, it creates a frenzy, which makes these things the thing you've got to own, and by any means possible. Maybe you go on eBay and pay hundreds of dollars. Maybe you go to every Target or FYE or Walmart within 500 miles of where you live and just take the week off work or something, I don't know, and go to all these stores. There's definitely an hysteria surrounding these figures that doesn't need to be there. I don't know if it, well, I don't care if it helps or hurts the sales of these things. I don't like it. And also the way that NECA is putting out wave after wave after wave. For a while, it seemed like, I think there were 2 waves that went up for pre-orders within a week or so of each other. And if not, then it was close. But it seems like every time you turn around, there's another wave and another wave and another wave up for pre-order, and you've got to pre-order it like that or you lose. You can't get it. And I saw an interview with a NECA representative saying that originally they just planned to make this wave 1. They didn't know they were going to be such a hit. And so then they started working on all these other waves. But that's ridiculous. That's baloney. Because there's no way they had all these other waves ready to introduce so quickly if they did all this like at the spur of the moment just in the last few months. They just suddenly put all these waves together with all these different characters and costumes and designs and worked out the licensing and all that. No, no, no. I mean, they had to have had this planned out in advance. Toy companies don't do this on the spur of the moment. So that's odd that they put that out there, that they only intended to make the 1 wave and then they were caught off guard. No, there's no way. Certainly by the time they had that 2nd wave out there, like announced, they had these other waves planned. And I'm sure they've got more and more waves that we don't know about. And once again, I'll just say, I like these figures. I'd like to collect them. Why make it difficult for your customers to buy your products? Why pit them against each other? Why create hysteria? Why create all this sourness? This isn't good. You don't need all these goofy games to sell this stuff. Just put the toys out there. Just let us buy the toys. NECA, please, humbly, please allow us to purchase your toys. If we're worthy, please allow us to buy your wonderful toys. if you could come off your cloud on Olympus and touch us with your wand and allow us, make us worthy of purchasing your toys. Just sell us the toys. Just make them available. And if you can't get them out there, then why have wave after wave after wave? Why not wait until the supply catches up to the demand? The whole thing is frustrating, and it's not just NECA. It's part of a larger trend I see with this sort of now you see it, now you don't kind of new way of marketing and distributing toys, where you've got to buy everything right now. As soon as it's available, you got to jump on it, because you don't know if it's limited, you don't know if it's going to sell out, you don't know if it's going to be available again, you don't know what's going on. So instead of making me feel like I've got to really be on the ball and buy all this stuff, it just makes me feel like I should just walk away. Like, this just isn't for me. I should stick with vintage toys. At least, you know, with a vintage line, if they made 12 figures in 1984, well, that's it. Once you've got those 12 figures, you got the line. And you know which ones are rarer, which ones are easier to find. If there are variants, you know what those are. You know what you're doing. It's all very self-contained. It's not this question mark, this unending, evolving process that just keeps going and going, and you never know when it's finished. And you never know where you stand. So maybe I should just stick with vintage toys. Maybe you should too. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. And, you know, I hate to be negative, but this is a negative situation. I didn't create that negativity. NECA created that negativity. It didn't fall on their heads. They created it. They created the negative situation. It's not something that just can't be helped. It can be helped. It's created. They've created this hysterical situation with these toys. They're very aware of it. They can stop it. They can fix it. They want it to be this way. I don't want it to be this way. I don't like it. I don't like it. I like the toys. I don't like the way that they've been marketed and distributed. I don't like creating hysteria. I don't like pitting collectors against each other. I don't like making people feel bad about collecting toys. It should be fun, not frustrating. If it can be helped, and it can be helped. That's it. Okay. I might have to cut that rant down a little bit, but I just felt like all that had to be said. And, you know, and if someone from NECA wants to come on this show, I'd be happy to talk to them. I mean, it wouldn't be a fluff piece. I would ask them all of these questions, and if I didn't like the answer, I would ask counter questions to try to follow up and dig a little deeper. But hey, I mean, if they want to come on, I would be happy to have someone from NECA on here to talk about this. Anyway, let's end this talking about Halloween. By the time you see this, Halloween will probably have passed, because I think this is going to upload November 2nd, the Saturday after Halloween. I could get it done for Halloween, but not likely. It's probably going to be Saturday. But I think that whole weekend is Halloween weekend, as far as I'm concerned. If Halloween's on a Thursday, then it's Halloween weekend. So it's still Halloween, as far as I'm concerned. I hope you have had a good Halloween season. I got to do a few things. I went to a haunted house with some friends. I went to a Halloween party, and oh, on Main Street we've got this. It's called Pumpkin Glow. It's like trunk or treat, but it's really just the families bring their kids to Main Street. We've got a historic, old-fashioned kind of Main Street, and the kids dress up in their Halloween costumes and go up and down the street, and all the stores have jack-o'-lanterns lit in front of the stores. It's really nice, and they got some professional actors in costumes that are up and down the street. It's a very nice atmosphere. So I experienced that, just walked up and down the street, experiencing that. Watched, some horror movies, did a little this, a little that. And at the time of this recording, Halloween hasn't happened yet, so I don't know how the trick-or-treating went, but if it's like years past, it probably won't go so well, because I live in a neighborhood where all the families are older, the kids have grown up and gone away, and there just aren't a lot of young families with young kids, so there's not a lot of trick-or-treaters, and that's always sad. I remember when I was a kid, and the streets were just filled with trick-or-treaters. Unfortunately, not the case. Now, a friend of mine in Brazil posted some video of trick-or-treating in her neighborhood, and I was shocked because it was like it used to be in the United States back, 40 years ago in her neighborhood, which looked very suburban. It's part of Sao Paulo. The streets were filled with kids, all dressed up. It was like, something out of E.T. And I thought, wow, I didn't know they had this in Brazil. And apparently it's just catching on now in Brazil. It didn't used to be this way. Halloween's starting to catch on in Brazil, and kids are going door to door trick-or-treating, just as that's declining in the United States, and they're all going to this trunk-or-treat stuff. Oh, trunk-or-treat. My goodness. Don't get me started on trunk-or-treat, but the door-to-door trick-or-treating seems to be in decline in the United States. I mean, some neighborhoods have it and some don't. But I'm happy to see that it's on the rise, apparently, in Brazil. That's great. I love it. Maybe I need to move to Brazil. I've thought over the last 15, 20 years, a lot of times, maybe I should move to Brazil for a lot of reasons. But this is just one more reason. I mean, if I could make a living there, I probably would have moved there, but because there's a lot of things I like in Brazil. But anyway, so that's interesting. What else can I say about Halloween? Overall, this October hasn't felt very Halloween-y, and I've heard some other people say that. And maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's just not, the weather hasn't felt like fall weather. Maybe that's it. It's just, it's not as cool as it has been in years past. I'm talking about temperature-wise, it hasn't been as cool. And the leaves aren't changing as early as they used to. And so that could be part of it. And I don't know, it could be activities, could be the media. We're not in a situation where there are 3 networks and they've all got Halloween specials, like the Great Pumpkin, that everybody watches. So that could be it. So I don't know, maybe it's just, as I get older, maybe it's just harder and harder to tap into that Halloween spirit, as hard as I try. But I hope that these shows have helped you tap into that spirit. I hope that my October Basement of Horror episodes have helped you feel like it's Halloween. That's part of why I do this, and why I do it this time of year. And I make them a little longer and put a little more into them. I want deluxe episodes in October to really do my part to pump some Halloween spirit into October. So I hope that it's helped you be in a Halloween mood. And, I mean, as I look at YouTube, I'm disappointed. There just doesn't seem like there's as much Halloween content on YouTube. It's a bunch of politics. Obviously, we got an election right around the corner. but maybe that's part of it. I don't see all the Halloween themed videos and all of the like horror movie retrospectives and monster stuff that I used to see on YouTube. YouTube's changed a lot, and I've gotten a lot of feedback thanking me for doing these kinds of shows, because this is the kind of show you used to see on YouTube, you know, a lot more of, and you don't see as much of it anymore, and that's too bad. So there again, I wish I could see more shows like this for my own benefit. I wish I could see more shows like this through the month of October, because it would help me feel more in the Halloween spirit. So more of you out there, next Halloween, you need to get on the ball and upload more Halloween content to YouTube throughout October, so that we can all get in the Halloween spirit. Is that a deal? I'll do my part, you do your part. That's it. Thank you very much. Have a happy Halloween weekend. Have a happy Halloween weekend. I hope you had a happy October, and I will see you soon with more episodes of Basement of Horror. Until then, the one who dies with the most toys is dead.